And welcome live to Lambeau. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is obviously Super Bowl Monday, not quite the same as Super Bowl Sunday, but about as exciting. So today we're going to be going over not quickly, but we're going to be going over the big game and everything we learned, and maybe just a little bit more of NFL news. We have the Jets and Aaron Rodgers parting ways. That's mostly the thing going on. Beyond that, so first up, we'll go with the Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, if you were watching the game last night, they were winning Super Bowl 59. So the Eagles last night had Chiefs a 40-22 defeat. Um, Even though it didn't really feel like that for the basically the entirety of the game, it felt like the Eagles were blowing out the Chiefs. I mean, they were for the vast majority of the game. The Chiefs didn't even score. I believe the Chiefs didn't even get past the 50-yard line. So in the middle of the field, they didn't get past midfield until about, oh, like a couple minutes left in the third quarter, which is really, really bad. They weren't even in field goal range. They had nothing for essentially 3/4 of the game. So it felt like Super Bowl 48, which was the Broncos and the Seahawks. And that was a, 40 to something, 40 to 6 ish. So, I mean, the main takeaway is just the Eagles dominating on both sides of the ball. So, starting off strong, um, showing an ability to both pass and run the ball. So, Eagles able to evade somewhat Kansas City's defense, which was one of the only things that in that game seemed to be working in Kansas City's favor. So, everything else was kind of rough, but the defense on Kansas City could have kept them in the game if the offense had been able to produce essentially at all for the vast majority of the game. Um, yeah, and then so they were able to pass, able to run, give it to Saquon. I believe they had about 130 yards on the day. Um, Other thing that they were able to do, so passing, running, also in order to keep the Chiefs from scoring, they Philadelphia's defense was very, very excellent, able to pressure Patrick Mahomes, keep him in the pocket, and collapse the pocket around him, forcing him to try to either scramble out of there or just kind of psychologically pressuring him. So, I mean, that's probably the main reason that, you threw for two interceptions, one being a pick six at about, I believe he caught that at about the 30 and ran it in. Um, Additionally, another thing kind of adding to that, pressuring Mahomes, kind of getting in his head a bit. He was sacked 6 times, losing a total of 31 yards, and that's just essentially a drive killer. You feel like you've got any sort of momentum, and then bam, you lose 6 yards, 7 yards, and now it's 3rd and 12 or whatever. And you would also see a lot of those longer throws, trying to get the ball out at all, and you just saw a lot of drops, two interceptions, a lot of balls batted around. Also, Mahomes would get pressured, he'd get rushed, and then he'd just chuck it off out to the side, or he'd chuck it towards the ground just to try to avoid getting a sack and losing even more yards. Um, yeah, Chiefs defense could have kept them in the game. I mean, they weren't perfect, and yeah, the Eagles got a bunch of points, but they were somewhat serviceable and had stopped them on a couple of runs, but just like it wasn't even really competitive at any point, which was compared to the last two Super Bowls was pretty surprising. So Eagles ended up 24-0 at the half, so not even a field goal in the first half, and you only had to be at the 40 something to be able to try to make a field goal. Chiefs, I mean, I'm sure they tried to make halftime adjustments, but it wasn't really noticeable. Like, they didn't come out and start looking good. They just continued the same thing. They'd go maybe do a couple first downs, and then get out, have to punt it away. Eagles pick the ball back up, etc. Um, and the first points that the Chiefs scored were with 34 seconds left in the third quarter with a touchdown. So, kind of yikes. Just, I mean, like, I believe the score at that point was 30 something to, we can check that right now. Just yikes. So, the ESPN headline says, "Oh, Eagles played a perfect game. Chiefs were a disaster." Yeah, 34 seconds. Um, and then they tried to go for two, which failed. So not even even 7 points, just 6 points, just disappointing. And then and then even with some offensive momentum, the Chiefs defense, even though they were trying real hard, it's getting into that fourth quarter of the game. The defense is starting to get worn down, just unable to stop the production from Philadelphia, allowing a field goal, another field goal after Chiefs offensive drive, and one resulting from a Mahomes fumble. So attempting to keep the hopes alive, touchdown drive with 8:01 left in the first quarter is when they started it. However, this is the thing that really sealed their fate. I mean, it was pretty sealed already, but there was definitely no coming back after this. I mean, they had 8 minutes left in the fourth, and then the drive that they took to get a touchdown took them 5 minutes and 7 seconds. So there's no way you're going to score three more touchdowns or four more at that point with 3 minutes left. So, and now you once you score a touchdown, obviously you got to give them the ball back. So they're also going to try to whittle down the time. Um, yeah, I mean it's just kind of a combination of just like bad. I might even say bad coaching and just bad play in general. The offensive line couldn't block for the Chiefs. That touchdown drive took 6 minutes or 5 minutes essentially, just a poor use of clock because I believe they just tried to run it or do a bunch of short passes and it's like that you're down by this much and you just gotta like basically go for broke, start chucking them up there and have a guy down that hopefully gets it or get some longer runs or passes at least, not very slow and methodical. That's the time when you're up, you can do that. Just just odd and not something that we've seen in Chiefs Super Bowls beyond the one I'll talk about in a minute. Um, and then also after each of those touchdown attempts, the Chiefs tried to take an onside kick, but I mean, onside kicks nowadays with the new onside kick rules where you had to declare and they're not a surprise anymore. It's a little less. It's a little less. It's a little less common that you were able to successfully recover one. Just complete and total blowout. I mean, the final score does look better than it felt like. It's 40-22, but like the last couple touchdowns basically padded your stats to make it look like it wasn't a blowout. So I would say, even though it was a blowout, I would say Mahomes, for what he was given, the cards he was dealt, I think he did okay. I can't think of a lot of quarterbacks in the National Football League that would do much different than he did under that amount of pressure. I mean, you watched it and it was just like the offensive line just caved in and he was running for his life. And yeah, I mean, he threw two picks, but that's just a thing that's a psychological thing. You're getting pressured out of your mind. It's not like, it's a psychological thing. So, it's difficult to, try to avoid that. I mean, like, you're just trying to get something going, and, you got all these guys coming at you, and you just got to get rid of the ball, and you think you can make a play, or you don't see somebody. So, yeah, even though they did pretty well in the last couple minutes, I mean, it's still a blowout either way, really. But, yeah. And, I mean, there was still talk about, the GOAT conversation, but, I mean, I would say that this game, Mahomes is a good top five quarterback. He's definitely top five. But Tom Brady didn't have many Super Bowls with, this big, didn't have any Super Bowls with this big of a margin of loss. So, and Patrick Mahomes now has two, both of which involve Tom Brady in some way, which is kind of interesting as a broadcaster and as a quarterback. Um, but he did as well as you could kind of expect with the cards he was dealt with you know, with an offensive line that wasn't able to hold up to the defensive pressure from the Eagles. Um, and also just receivers who missed the ball, seemed like some miscues, seemed like a lot of times where, maybe that's why the interceptions were thrown. Miscues, people got held up in coverage. Who knows? But also big props to the Eagles defense because I believe in the last episode of Lambocast that we had discussed that the Eagles defense was like 31st in the league last year, but this year I believe it's first or second or is high up on the list. Um, which a massive improvement year over year, and that's one of the things that I think Philadelphia did really well is they were able to get a bunch of talented players, and I mean some of it's luck too. They didn't have a lot of injuries, um, so that's pretty good for them. And that defense, and I mean obviously the offense and Saquon and Hurts and all that won them the game. All right, so reasons behind the Chiefs' loss. So watching this game, I was struck by just the amount of similarity between this Super Bowl and another Tom Brady Super Bowl. The last one he played in as a player, Super Bowl 55. So this graph right here is from our Reddit post. You can see the link there. And for our audio listeners, the link is in the show notes. You can scroll down, you'll see the image there. On YouTube or Twitch, you can see this obviously. So the top graph right there is a picture of Patrick Mahomes's movements in the pocket essentially. And the bottom is Tom Brady's movements in the pocket in Super Bowl 55. So you can see obviously Mahomes is moving a lot, and I believe those white ones are the incomplete and the red is the complete. So obviously, you know, just as in Super Bowl 55, Mahomes was definitely running a significant amount, and that's obviously going to impact your ability to throw, your ability to complete passes. So yeah, that was just the main takeaway. I wouldn't say it was quite as bad as Super Bowl 55 because I remember watching that and just watching him absolutely scramble. This game, I felt like he was a lot more contained than 55. 55, he was just sacked basically constantly. So in both of those games, obviously the the uh the choke point, if you will, is the offensive line not being able to hold up. All right, if we go up here, I'm just gonna make sure that it's the yeah, red is complete. All right, so the yep dominant defenses are basically the Chiefs' Achilles heel. So like their offensive line just can't hold up to them. So I mean the main thing that killed them was the dominant defense caused 3 turnovers, 2 of which came from interceptions because Mahomes was pressured, probably didn't see people, just had to get rid of the ball, thought he saw somebody open, didn't see the defender cutting across, or didn't see the defender because it was blocked or whatever. Also, the fumble can't really. I mean, yeah, Mahomes is partly to blame, but like the man got crushed and probably should have had a little bit better spatial awareness on that play, because I believe his arm was kind of out to the side with the ball, but can't really blame him. I mean, at that point the game was basically over, so who cares? Yeah, beyond that much. Penalties cost them yards and momentum. The Chiefs actually, or the Eagles rather, actually got more penalties than the Chiefs ate, but they did not count for as many yards. So 59 yards versus 75. So both penalties on both teams rather, but definitely for the Chiefs especially with the lack of production on offense, like any penalty is just gonna like essentially kill any sort of momentum you thought you had going. So you definitely saw that. And yeah, the last point is just the offensive line. If the Chiefs hope to get to another Super Bowl, which I think they're able to. I don't think this is, you know, the end for any of their Super Bowl hopes. I just think they just need a better offensive line in general. Like they can't expect to win every year with the same offensive line because as soon as they hit like a really, really good defense, that offensive line just folds and Mahomes is left trying to make something out of chaos essentially because he's getting pressured. People are covering other people. You know, you got tricky schemes. People are dropping under that then pick it off and run it in, etc. So yeah, that's the main thing there. And I mean, that was kind of surprising to me because I had picked the Chiefs originally, but I mean, probably should have known better as a Packers fan since they beat us. They were able to, have an elite defense and perform at a high level. And I saw what it did to Jordan Love. I saw what it did to the Rams. I saw what it did to the Commanders. Just having a defense pressure your quarterback is at that level causes issues, causes turnovers, causes interceptions. Um, Unable to stop them from pressuring Mahomes. Eagles, I mean, they just got to keep their defense going strong, essentially. So we'll see in the offseason now that they're champions. Does anybody, any chief staff get traded or not traded, get picked up? But it's a little bit early to try to tell that. And I'm recording this on the 10th, so Chiefs Super Bowl parade's on Valentine's Day, so that's a happy Valentine's Day if you're from Philadelphia. Um, yeah, 6 sacks too, with a loss of 31 yards. So just another drive killer, essentially. Just like you think you got some momentum, and then all of a sudden you lose 31 yards, and your quarterback's shaken up, and that's part of the mental thing too. It's as much of a physical game as it is a mental game. So you're throwing interceptions, you're getting sacked, your offensive line's trying to hold on at all. Yep, it's crazy. So we'll see if Chiefs come back, see what they do in the draft. They definitely got to beef up the offensive line. I think they also need a couple receivers too, just because some of them just didn't seem like they were doing so hot yesterday. Also, pass rusher would be nice for them. All right, and then our final story for Super Bowl week that's now over, but it's Monday. Um, there's a rumor, pretty strong rumor from Adam Schefter that the Jets and Rodgers are parting ways. Um, just disappointing 2 seasons. I mean, not so much Rodgers' performance, but just the team's performance. Because if you look at his stats, I mean, the 2024 season, which is essentially the only season he played, I mean, 63% of his passes. So, I mean, not horrible, not great, but pretty good. 3,897 yards. That's a very good stat. 23 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. That's not a bad stat. He's a good quarterback. I mean, he's older now, but like still able to do pretty decently. It's just the rest of the team struggled. So either way, I mean, he's gonna get traded or if he retires or whatever. Uh, I mean, I would personally, as long as he doesn't go to an NFC North team as a Packers fan, um, yeah, I could see Steelers, Vikings, Raiders, Titans, anything like that. I could see him going to the Raiders. I mean, anybody essentially wants, a quarterback to mentor somebody young or just to have have a gap year while they're trying to, you know, figure stuff out. But it would be nice to see him, have a decent last year as opposed to, playing for the Jets and just having a bad season, well, 2 seasons. You know, have him completely healthy, and you always have to wonder if the Achilles tear has something to do with his performance over the last couple seasons, but that doesn't necessarily excuse it or anything, but just maybe he's playing a little bit more conservatively, and if he plays again next year, you might see something different. So that concludes this episode of Lambeau Cast. Thank you for watching, and see you